Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Zach in Washington, D.C. Today we are discussing Shiny Gel, the lost website, the Olympic Opening Ceremonies, and images on legs, all on Light Talk.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. If you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. That's right, Zach, Steve, and David are here with you today. Welcome, everyone, to episode 226. That's right. And today we have a really big show planned for you, including our take on the opening ceremonies of this year's Summer Olympics in Tokyo. But before we get started, I just wanted to mention about that great interview we had last week with David Gallo. And thanks, Zach, for arranging that. I thought that was a great interview.
It was my pleasure.
Oh, he was great.
Yeah, it was really funny.
Yeah.
He really enjoyed it. He said, hey, man, this is a lot more fun than I thought it would be. Most of our guests say that. Oh, it's going to be horrible. No.
That's like a first date, though. I mean, do you get a second date when your date says this is a lot more fun than I thought it would be? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I used to rate dates with my date. At the end of the night, so, between 1 and 10, what would you give this? And, she said something like, I'll give it like a 5. I knew there was no future. So, but that's just the way it is. So anyway.
That really worked?
It actually worked. Okay. I always believe that before you go on a date with somebody for the first time, there should be like a survey that you give out to the person, like 30 questions. Sure. And then you get to review it, because if it's too different, then all of a sudden you're saying, why waste time? Don't forget about the date, right?
Well, it's just like the Olympics, where the Finnish judge and the Denmark judge and the England judge give you a high score, and the Russian judge gives you a 2.
Yeah, well.
Is this what this is?
Maybe you should bring international judges on the next date.
I kind of like that idea. Anyway, back to David Gallo. That's episode 225, our interview with David Gallo. It was a blast. We had a great time. So check it out. So let's get started with the show. Steve has our first listener question.
Yes, it's Ricky in Hong Kong. And Ricky writes, when I use Roscoe's Psych diffusion and silks, does it matter which side faces the lamp? One side is shiny and the other side is dull. Ricky, not all diffusions are created equal.
That's right.
Some work better on open face lights. Some are kinder to faces. Some can soften without killing an edge. It's important to experiment with the diffusions you're going to use. Diffusions soften the edge of a light source by spreading the beam. It allows the light to more effectively wrap around a 3D object. Usually the greater increase in beam width, the softer the shadow. But keep in mind, it also kills output with that greater softness. Now, how does this answer your question? I have not called Roscoe, but I'm kind of convinced it doesn't matter if you have the shiny side or the dull side out. Someone's going to write it and say, you idiot, and it matters, but I don't think it matters. However, the second part of your question about silks do matter, and silks are different from diffusion. The way a diffusion kind of spreads the light out, diffuses it, and softens it, a silk can stretch the light. So if you look at something like Roscoe Tough Silk, it's like number 104, that can stretch the light. So it can make it horizontal, or it can expand it and make it vertical. So it doesn't necessarily mean one side or the other is better, but when you cut it, you have to think about which way you want to spread the light. The reason you would use a silk is to, you could affect the edges of a scalloped edge on a set. The lights are a little too close, they're at extreme angles. The silk can help stretch that edge and soften that edge. Or maybe, you're doing something film noir and you just want to stretch some light across an actor's face, and a silk will work well for that. I don't know, have you guys used silk and diffusion? Is there a right side out and a bad side in?
Well, it's funny because when this question first came up, it actually came up about a month ago. We've been moving it to this show because we had a bunch of interviews and stuff like that. But when it came up, we did an unscientific test out at the production table in Denver. And believe it or not, some of the silks are shiny on one side and some are, a little rougher on the other. And some seem to have the same surface texture. So I don't know if that is a universal issue. However, we did a test where we actually had a flashlight and we put it through the silk and we tried both sides and there was very little difference. And I had asked the electricians when they put silks in the like strip lights, because I use silks a lot, for strip lights if I'm using like MR16s or something like that. And I asked them, I said, do you pay attention to what side you put? No, we never pay attention. They have no idea. They just throw it in there. I don't know. There may be a difference. I don't think it really matters.
So maybe this is a manufacturing process more than an optics process on the shiny side versus matte side.
I don't know. I don't know if one side is more heat resistant. I have no idea.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the manufacturer would tell you that it's like two different effects, the shiny side and the dull side. But like this is all, something I learned early on hanging out with like Josh White in the Joshua Light Show is that no matter what they tell you is the right way to do it, that you still should just experiment because you may discover something that looks right to you that may not be necessarily the intended use for it. But as long as you're playing safe and nothing's going to set on fire, I think that you may find that there's a difference, or you may find that there's absolutely no difference.
And yeah, Ricky, if you've got an extra $39, you can send that to Roscoe, and they will send you a diffusion and silk kit. So you'll get a little cut. I think it's like a 7.5-inch cut, maybe, or a 10-inch cut of everything they make. Then you can experiment.
Yeah, why not? So anyway, we don't know. We've tried it in practicality. Nobody seems to care. And I have never noticed anything. So there you go.
There's probably some lighting designer that's like shiny side only.
That's right.
And he's like the shiny side Nazi, that guy.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, well.
All right. Well, Deb in Utah writes, can I successfully project images on black velour legs and borders?
Why?
Well, Deb.
I have no idea why you would want to do this.
I think there's a running theme with these questions that they're all about you should experiment and see what looks good and then let us know. I mean, I can say from my own experience, there is always, this is, first of all, this is probably one of the most asked questions of my entire career.
No,
how
really?
do I project on black? People always
black,
ask
but not
because,
black velour, right? But black.
Well, but there's all kind. How do I project on black duvetine? How do I project on black velour? How do I project on black bricks? And I mean, the answer is basically the same for all of these, which is you try really hard with as bright a projector as you can get. I think that you want to go into it sort of with knowledge that only really high contrast imagery is going to read it all. So like, don't go in there thinking that you're going to project something that's very delicate and subtle and has, beautiful gradients or lots of tiny text, because none of that's going to read. But like that being said, I have certainly done things where we've projected like the outline of a rooftop or a chalk drawing and things like that. And those kind of things will work. I mean, you want to be really good friends with the lighting designer, and you probably want to take him out to dinner a couple times in order to get him to pull it down so that your images will be seen.
Yeah, to zero.
Yeah, I think you can go to like 2. You can go to
2%. All right, there you go.
Yeah.
We can live with that.
And you really want to think a lot about like side lighting and things like that, because you're still going to need to pick out your actors if you're doing something that has actors, obviously. But that you're going to want to keep the light away from the black velour as much as humanly possible, so that the only thing lighting it up is the projector itself. But it's really just about you can successfully do it if you plan ahead and you're aware of the limitations. And my suggestion, not unlike ordering that kit from Roscoe, would be get some black velour and play with it with a projector, and then you can convince your scenic designer and director that it doesn't work.
There you go.
That can be the name of your new book, Play with the Projector.
Yes,
with Zach.
Playing with the Projector by Zach.
By Zach. Okay, so first of all, on a serious note, speaking of 2%, it reminded me of Gil Wechsler, who just passed away. And Gil was an amazing designer at the Met for many, many years. And his designs will live on forever because, it's the Met and the designs are great. And Gil was an amazing artist and a very nice man. But he was known as the original Prince of Darkness. And not because the shows were dark, was because he understood about contrast and how it's important to be a shadow designer as well as a lighting designer, which is something that Robert Edmond Jones said. But back to the question. The whole reason why black velour is made is to absorb light and not reflect it. And that is why usually legs and borders are created out of velour, black velour. Unless you're in a high school, then it's whatever the school colors are. Like puce and yellow,
Right.
School
Purple
colors,
and
puce
gold.
and purple and gold. Purple and gold actually works, but puce and yellow do not work. And I have actually seen that high school. And you just wonder who chose those colors. That being said, I have actually tried to project on black velour. Not necessarily with a projector, but I probably threw some lights on there for some stupid reason. Mainly because there was a very famous lighting designer back in the 70s who told me once, I'm not going to mention this person's name, but that, hey, have you ever tried lighting black velour with like Congo blue? It really helps make it blacker. And I said, blacker? How can it make it? No, it doesn't make it. Because you're going to show up dust on it. You don't want to hit that stuff with any light whatsoever. So if indeed you're going to be lighting a surface that's black and you want it to be a reflective type of black, which is what you want if you want to see the light, then I would suggest you go with Darknet. Rose Brand makes this fabric, and it is absolutely fabulous because it's almost as good as black velour, but it has a high reflectivity. And it's expensive, no doubt about it. But if you're going to do it, if you want a soft fabric that's black and enable you to have a decent projection screen, then I would highly recommend you looking at the different types of Darknet that they have.
Do you remember seeing that at LDI from a few years ago? It was amazing.
I loved it.
It was just amazing product.
So yeah, avoid velour. Because again, velour is made out of these little teeth. It's like a fuzzy fabric, and it's created so that whatever light it reflects, it actually reflects it to the side, which is actually the same type of philosophy behind Vantablack. Vantablack has so many tiny little microscopic nanotubes that it only reflects.
Right, nothing reflects straight back.
Nothing reflects straight back. And it's really an incredible, incredible thing. We talked about Vantablack way in the first season. So it's still happening, if you can afford it.
I'm assuming when I read this question that Deb has no choice and that she's being forced to project onto these black velour legs. But I do think that you're totally right. At that point, there's a lot of things that you can do. We've talked about this several times, like that the black velour, as you said, is specifically designed to be, like, don't look over here. And so there are other products that are like, don't look over here, but if you have to, then we can play nice. We could talk, coming up, we have an Imagineer that's going to join us, and he can talk all about, they have specific shades of color at Disney that they've done psychological testing that they call go away green. Like there's colors that they have and shades that they have that are scientifically designed to make you not look at them.
Is that like the puce curtains that I saw in that high school? Speaking of that, that's next week. Casey, right? Casey's going to be on the show.
Yeah, that's right.
That's next week.
Yeah.
Wow, we got to
So
get
you
on
can tell
that.
us about
Now I
Joey
want to
Green.
look at that green color and compare it to institutional green, which makes me calm.
Right. Well,
And
we can talk
relax.
about it next week. There's a book that the color master from Disney, this guy John Hench, wrote called Designing Disney, and there are like 3 chapters on like white and black and green, and he's got like 12 different shades of white, and each shade means something different. And it's amazing, but also you're sort of like, I have a week at tech. I don't have time for that.
I think it's very interesting.
Yes.
I'd like to
No, why can't they sell stuff like that in the Disney store?
Yeah.
That book?
Why is it? Yeah, why does it always have to be like Simba, the little lion?
You got to talk about Imagineer books, that'll put you to sleep at night better than Simba. Anyway,
Snap.
Carl in Oregon writes, my policy is that once the damn show moves to previews, no one can be in the booth except the board operator. I just had to throw out the guest LD out of the booth. What do you think? Well, I think that guest LD was me. You threw me out of the booth, you bastard. Anyway, no.
I want to know who Carl is.
Carl.
Can Carl go in the booth?
I think Carl's like the master electrician, I assume. Or maybe he's the production manager or someone like that.
We're creating Carl's backstory.
Okay, so here's the deal. I always ask permission if I want to watch the show from the booth. And there's a good reason why an LD may want to watch the show from the booth. First of all, I get very nervous on opening. Matter of fact, for many years, I refused to go to opening nights. But anyway, now I'm back to going opening nights. But I will never sit down in the audience. So I usually ask permission to sit in the booth. And I totally understand why Carl doesn't like LDs in the booth. Because sometimes LDs start getting involved and they say, wait a second, that cue is late. Just saying stupid things to the board op. And the board op needs to concentrate. And mistakes are going to be made, but you don't say anything. And that's what I would do. I would sit in the back of the booth where no one could see me. And I just keep quiet and I just take notes. But no, I can understand why you don't want lighting designers in the booth. As a matter of fact, I've never been denied access to a booth. Really, because I behave myself. So if you're not going to behave yourself, you shouldn't be in the damn booth. What do you guys think?
I agree.
I think Carl is asking the wrong question. The question Carl should be asking is, when do I make an exception? I don't question his rules. I mean, maybe he's a production manager. He has rules at his theater that work well for that theater. The question is, when do you bend the rule? I like sitting in the booth because I don't like sitting in the audience either. And I can sit in the booth and sit there and take notes. If I'm sitting in the auditorium at the preview taking notes, that's kind of annoying and presumptuous to sit there, doing that with people on either side of me.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, a lot of the big booths around the country have a couch, which is nice. So it's nice to sit in the couch instead of a theater chair. But I think that the other part of this in terms of note taking is that, you're able to sort of watch and monitor how things are going from the board ops perspective, and rather than, interrupt him because a cue is late, you get a better sense of, was it called late? Did he take it late? Operator error, as we say. And so that you can be more proactive about how to fix it next time, since you don't have to ask what happened, what went wrong. I think when you talk about New York, like Broadway, because of all the union stuff that goes on, if you were even in the booth, you would not be allowed to touch or talk at all, because unless you're in local 1, you can't be near any of that equipment. So there would be no reason for you to be in the booth in the first place. And I will say, I've worked on some shows. Some of these board ops, they must have an amazing ability to separate their brain, because they'll have the Yankee game, the hockey game, and then the camera game for the show.
And they're reading a book.
Right, and they're reading a book, and they never miss a cue. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
The board operator years ago at the Shakespeare Theater, he ran an Excel spreadsheet program opening night. And every time he would hit the go button, he would hit the button on the Excel spreadsheet. And he mapped out the entire show. So he knew between cue 21 and 22, he had 6 minutes and 10 seconds. And that was his time to run to the bathroom.
Right. It's sort of the same thing. I remember once as a kid, I took a tour of the radio station out on Long Island, and the DJ was like, when I put on American Pie, that means I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's 8 minutes long. Right.
Yes.
The older you get, you need more time. You start going to Gadda to Vida, then you have colon problems.
Exactly. Right.
Okay,
right.
For the next 28 minutes, we're going to listen to a drum solo. See you guys in a half hour.
You are listening to Light Talk, and today's episode is sponsored by...
A public service announcement from no more 10 out of 12s. Well, we've all been there. The tool aisle of Home Depot. Our gig bag runneth over with useless hand tools and gadgets. But what is the worst tool we own? Let me give you a hint. Does anyone else hate the adjustable wrench? That's right. The classic adjustable wrench, which earned its name thanks to the shape of its jaws, is a standard feature of most stagehand tool bags, and it is a disaster. I have rounded off far too many bolts using them, and now I cringe that I even have one in my toolbox, and I consider throwing it away somewhat regularly. Truth be known, I own 7. The adjustable wrench is found in almost every back pocket in America, which is something of a puzzle, because few tools are less effective. And don't even get me started on channel locks. The C-wrench want to be. C-wrenches have a terrible habit of loosening no matter how tightly you adjust them, and that is exactly the wrong characteristic for a tool that needs to tightly grip a nut or bolt in order to work perfectly. Be honest. How many times have you smashed your knuckles? No brand of adjustable wrench really performs adequately. Don't believe me? Then why are there 160 C-wrench models worldwide? Why is it so hard to get it right? It's just a damn wrench. Still don't believe me? How many times does the thumb wheel freeze or seize up on your wrench?
I hate that.
How many times do you have to reposition the wrench in your hand? The C-wrench is the thumb drive of the toolbox. You flip it 3 times to get it to work. They are awkward in tight spaces. And why the hell is there a metric C-wrench? Our friend, the adjustable wrench. Fess up. How many times have you used it as a hammer? This has been a public service announcement from no more 10 out of 12s.
I'm going to have nightmares.
I just bought an adjustable wrench because I had to do some toilet repair because the moron who owned the house before me put in a specialized Brazilian toilet in my guest's bathroom. And the thing broke, the button that you pushed or the flush. So I had to replace that entire mechanism, which is not easy because there's only one model of what do you call that thing that you push or I know you have the lever, but it pulls the chain up, that thing, right? So there's only one thing that fits, right? And it's specially made for this model. Thank God it was only $10, but I needed an adjustable wrench, and boy, was that a pain in the ass. And it's exactly what Steve said, because you just can't get it in, and then you can move it for like 1/4 of an inch, and you have to reposition it and move it like 1/8 of an inch. You have to reposition it, you got 1/4 of an inch. Who designed this damn thing? There's got to be a better way.
My favorite C-wrench is what I call the Wretched Wrench of Death. And it doesn't happen often, but usually about every 5 or 6 years, you get this C-wrench, and it has an insulated handle on it. Mm-hmm. Never buy a C-wrench with an insulated handle because it gives you a false sense of security. Someone has got their brand new wrench with an insulated handle, and they're doing something electrical. And they think, well, I'm insulated. Then they reach up and they touch the thumb wheel with their thumb. And you hear this, oh, God. I mean, I love that sound in the theater.
Yeah. I want to know what makes a toilet Brazilian.
Let me tell you, if you looked at this toilet, it looks exactly like any toilet you'd buy at Home Depot, or Lowe's. But it has a button instead of a lever. And the button broke off. And it's a round hole, which means that your typical...
on the top?
Not the top one. It's a side thing, and it's a button. Okay? That's what makes it Brazilian. They use buttons instead of, flipper levers. So anyway, I mean...
an American toilet isn't good enough for you.
No.
You got to use a fancy socialist button toilet.
I did not buy this thing, and I'm not going to change out the damn toilet that works perfectly. Okay, I have an issue with toilets, all right? And this toilet actually works pretty well. So when you have a good toilet, you don't want to get rid of it, because the toilet you replace it with may be a total disaster. My brother bought a toilet. He bought one of these fancy Japanese toilets. It was so fancy, he had to upgrade the electrical system in his bathroom to run it. So I'm not into that sort of thing, but that's how I would end up with. So I just want to keep my Brazilian toilet and everything would be fine.
I like the toilets in Vegas because I feel like you could flush a body down those.
Yes.
They're so powerful.
Yes, they're fantastic. That's because people are flushing bodies down them.
Right. And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sound of those rabid ducks means that once again it's time for Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about the opening ceremonies of the Summer Olympics in Tokyo, Japan. Like many previous Olympics games, there's been a lot of political controversy surrounding the games in Tokyo. But this year is a little different, as the controversy is not only about the ridiculous amount of money that is spent building empty event stadiums, but the fact that we are deep into a pandemic that is far from being over. In fact, Tokyo is presently in a state of emergency due to the pandemic. And this is why you see empty stadiums and venues during the televised coverage of the games. However, that being said, we did watch the opening ceremonies, and as we have in the past, we will give you our take on this almost 4-hour presentation. So what do you guys think? Was it something special? I mean, it was certainly different from the past opening ceremonies, don't you think?
Did anyone work on it that we know?
I don't know.
And before I answer that question,
I don't
Like,
think
if you did turn off your podcast player now.
That's right. Yes, you don't want to know. I don't think a director actually worked on it, so I'm not worried about it.
they fired the director.
Yes, they did fire the
Yeah.
director.
I'm wondering if
day
any of the
before.
design team are our friends.
Was there a
don't
design
know.
team?
I mean, it just seemed lackluster. I mean, I know we're in a pandemic, but the other Olympic openings have always been kind of a look at the country's culture. And I mean, they don't have to have, a balloon drop up there, but, I was expecting to learn a little bit about Japan and its history and its place in the world, and I didn't get that.
I mean, I think it's very interesting because, I mean, first and foremost, we can say this is the 2020 Olympics happening in 2021. So I kind of wondered, was any part of this, because I mean, the pandemic didn't really become a global phenomenon until like last February, which would have been about 6 months or so before those Olympics. And I imagine that some of these opening ceremonies must take at least a year to plan, to some of the complexity of it. So I wonder if any of this was a holdover or a leftover from what may have been planned for last year, or if this was just like, we don't know if it's going to happen, and then, okay, it's going to happen, we better throw some stuff together, get like the samurai costumes.
Well,
because there was a little.
There was some good things to say about it, I must say.
Yeah, absolutely.
I loved when they first introduced the I guess that little Mount Fuji thing. By the way, they need someone, whoever designed this, and again, I apologize, maybe it was done for a reason, but they need to understand scale. Because when you have scenery, you got to think about where that scenery is going to be. Because
You mean like Spinal Tap?
Yeah, exactly. Just like it reminded me of
Stonehenge.
It reminded me of Stonehenge when the thing came down and the little people were dancing around it, and
Right.
because it was so small, it just was totally out of proportion. So that being said, you have this sort of symbolic Mount Fuji there that's about 25 feet tall. That may work in a theater with a proscenium that's like 27 feet tall. But, when you've got a stadium that's 200 feet tall, it looks rather small compared to it. And whenever they would have a wide shot, you would say, wow, that sort of looks like that cost $50,000,
Right.
And that was unfortunate. I thought that, because I think the design was really, really interesting, especially when it opened up to the staircase and she went up the stairs, and then the basketball that was on top when it opened up, it reminded me of that great mirror ball that they used in Pink Floyd, except it was a lot smaller. It had mirrors inside and all that stuff, which was kind of cool. And it had a decent flame. Thank God the flame was. But the whole idea of the Olympic flame, well, there are a lot of symbolism to the Olympic flame, but I think one of the main reasons was when it was on, people knew where to go. They knew this was the stadium, the Olympics were happening here. So you would have to have the flame high enough so that people outside the stadium can see it. Now, it didn't have to be that high, but you would have to have some sense of height. Well, if it's only like 25 feet high, or whatever it was, 30 feet, it looked 25 feet high. It was probably 30 or 40 feet. But when you're in a stadium that's like 200 feet high, that's a real problem. So I just found that a little bit disconcerting. I thought there was a lot of good things about it. I thought in the beginning when they had that great kabuki moment and then they had that amazing jazz pianist, I loved it. I loved that integration of the culture was the same, but it was like, thousands of years apart, and it worked. I mean, the music worked.
I think her name is Hiromi Uhara.
She's awesome. Absolutely awesome. I thought that was the best part, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of the challenge here, we look at things like the Super Bowl, and I've talked to the people who work on that often, and they've done presentations at LDI, and they talk about the challenge of how do you serve the audience while also serving the TV cameras. And, for the Super Bowl, it's really TV cameras first, but you still have to have something that's for the audience as well. I feel like with this, it was only going to be for the TV cameras, but it didn't really make for a good television presentation in a way. There were a lot of shots that I questioned.
Yeah, well, you don't have any wide shots. You don't, if you're going to do it for TV, don't do any wide shots where you see the whole empty stadium around it.
Well, let me disagree with you for a second. Let me throw something else out there.
Sure.
Who is the Olympic Opening Ceremonies for? Maybe Japan got it right. Maybe it's not supposed to be for us watching on the television. Athletes. Maybe it's supposed to be for the athletes, because if you looked at the athletes, they were sitting there hugging each other and crying and singing along. And
that's a good point.
It's interesting that what the prime minister used the word, what do you call it? He didn't say celebration. He said commemoration. So maybe it was about let's make it for the people who've been waiting another year to practice their craft. I mean, I'll admit it wasn't what I thought I was going to get when I turned it on. I was disappointed with it, but maybe they intended for it to be intimate and not over the top.
I agree with you, Steve. Because it is about all the people we lost and time we lost and careers that were lost. So much loss that's happened in a year and a half. And I respect that. And that worked for me. So just let's talk real quickly about the high point and the low point, because I have a definite high point and low point.
I think we haven't hit the low point yet.
I know what the low point is. We haven't talked about it.
No, I mean, it hasn't happened yet. I'm wondering if the low point is the closing ceremonies. And the reason I say that, if I read this correctly in the newspaper, and someone's going to jump in and correct me online, I think when your event is over, you have to leave Tokyo within 24 hours because of the pandemic. So I think those people who were there 3 days and competing before the opening ceremony, if their event was over on day one, they weren't there for the opening ceremonies. So I'm wondering, if I'm correct in this, I'm wondering who's going to be at the closing ceremonies, because it'll have to be cut probably by 50, 60, 75% of the athletes too.
There'll be nobody in there.
Drones and holograms.
There'll be drones and holograms.
Very few people.
Speaking of drones, I thought the drones was a high point. And I think the low point was Imagine. I can't listen to Imagine anymore. I love Imagine. It's one of the greatest songs ever written, but everybody does it for events like this. And the way they presented it, like they had all these superstars in front of a white screen behind them. It was probably a green screen that they turned white. It just looked so stark and weird. I don't know. I just found that really weird.
It makes a warm, personal song feel impersonal.
It was very cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the drones were absolutely fabulous, but they did one trick.
Right. It was short.
And I liked that they had that sort of graphic at the beginning, those blocks that they had on at first with the kids on the stadium floor with the blocks, and then it went up to the sky, and the drones are in those blocks, and then it turned into that globe. But that was it. It just did the globe, which is fabulous and looked great, but that was pretty much it.
I mean, I think that for nighttime spectaculars that drones are definitely at least a part of the future of this stuff. And, one of the things that I've done a lot of investigating with drones is that it's a way to sort of light up the sky in a low sensory way. So like kids or adults who may be scared of fireworks or the sound of fireworks are able to have an experience like fireworks or even more than fireworks without the sound. But I did feel like, it was a beautiful effect, but it was like, a one-trick pony. It was a beautiful pony, but a one-trick pony.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool.
I'm going to agree with you on Imagine. I think that was a low point.
Yeah.
But I'm going to throw a wild card out there for the high point. And I think the high point was the entering of the Olympic torch.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And I think that's Satoru. I'm butchering his name. I think it's Satoru O, the baseball player. The effort he had to make just to walk into the stadium. And who was it? It was the Yankee player, Haduku Matsu, who was helping hold him up.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that too, Steve. I'm glad you mentioned that. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, that was cool. I was worried about, though, that amazing Japanese tennis player who brought it up to the top, and I thought she was going to light her hair on fire. I mean, it was very close. Okay.
But I think that's what they got right, though. I'm seeing a little bit of athletic history and heritage in Japan with the athletes who were part of the opening ceremony. I just wanted to see more of the arts and culture.
Yeah, I wanted to see more too.
I'll give you a little bonus question here. Do you know who the drummer was on the original John Lennon version of Imagine?
David Gallo.
No, it wasn't. It was David Gallo. David doesn't play drums. Okay, who
he
played
does not
drums? Paul McCartney.
It was Alan White from Yes.
Oh, my God. Alan White. And you are correct. Now that you mentioned it, I do remember that.
Yes.
Yes, he was on the Imagine session. Yep.
Yes.
Pretty damn cool. There you go. Well, he wasn't playing drums that night, so it wasn't that good. But boy, when you heard it in the background when they were pointing at the drone, and I said, oh, God, this is another Imagine moment. And then sure enough, we had John Legend. John Legend is on all these things. I don't know what sort of contract he has, but he's on all these things. So good for John,
I think after you get 12 or 13 or 15 Grammys, you're probably in demand.
Yeah.
Once you're an EGOT.
Based on other people's music.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Okay. It's not so nice.
Well, we can say, he's an EGOT, but do we really count being a producer in terms of EGOT? Because, it's not the same as when you're a performer. That's all I'm going to say.
I would take it.
Sure.
But did you see him as Jesus?
Yeah, he was good.
I thought he was very good.
Yeah, I like that production.
I love that production. We actually went on and on the show about that production. It was just fantastic. I love that production. Okay, so Steve has our last question of the day.
Evelyn in Ohio writes, has high-end systems gone out of business? I can't find the website anymore. Evelyn, what the hell are you smoking in Ohio? No, they haven't gone out of business. They're one of the best lighting companies out there. They were acquired, I think, 3 years ago by ETC. So there's been a transition. I mean, the place in Austin is still open for business. They're up in Wisconsin. I think what happens is as ETC has they have a marketing department. They have a publicity department. They have an education department. So what's happened is high-end has shut the Austin high-end website down and simply migrated that to ETC. So if you go onto ETC's website and type in high-end system, there's your old buddy, the website. Nothing to worry about.
You don't even have to do that. Just go onto Google and type in high-end system and you get to their website.
That was cold, David. That was cold.
But it's true. That's what I can tell you. There's high-end systems, and it says an ETC company. Okay, and you click on it, and it takes you right to the high-end website.
Well, there, ETC, you need to send Evelyn a T-shirt because she's clearly worried. You got to make her
an ETC or a high-end T-shirt? I've got a high-end hat I could send her.
Or just send her a Lumen Brothers T-shirt.
No, we don't have them. And I wanted
we have shot glasses.
Yeah, we have shot glasses.
Okay.
The T-shirt's great because I designed a T-shirt that had all of our sponsors on the back. There were like 300 sponsors on the back.
Nice.
But the guys said, no, that's not a good thing. Stan said it costs too much money. So
Do we still have any not safe for dishwasher coffee mugs?
yes, we have. I have two cartons of them. So we'll be giving those cheap pieces of shit out too.
Yeah, we'll be giving those away.
Well, I do want to add that High-End Systems had a number of video products, which I think that ETC may have pulled from the market. So if Evelyn is looking for like a DL3 or a media server, that may be why she can't find it.
Right.
I think those are still on the website, though, as
Are they?
legendary products or
legendary.
something.
They were legendary.
They were not legendary in my experience.
No,
How do they work on black velour?
Legendary does not necessarily mean good. Because if there's a legend, it could be a legend of a bad thing about him.
Right. With
Yeah,
John
so-
Legend.
John Legendary. But he's good. I mean, John Legend's very good.
Sure.
You know, but
Yeah,
you know,
if I had a choice between him or a DL3, I'd probably go with him.
I'd go with him. He's better
Yeah.
looking too.
He can light up black velour much better than DL3.
Yes. He would be a much better velour solution for.
Yes.
Who was that? Diane or Kim? What was her name? Way in the back.
Deb.
In the red front. Deb. Wait, Deb belongs in last week or 2 weeks ago when we had the Mouseketeers.
Oh, yeah.
So Deb, she needs to be back in that one. So
Deb and Cubby.
Cubby. That's, I'm go on about Cubby.
Cubby wasn't the same after prison.
Yeah.
He
Save
didn't
it for
go
next
to
week.
prison. Cubby, don't trash Cubby. He was a great drummer and a really nice person. And I think wasn't it Ann Militello that did lighting for the Carpenters? Because I'm pretty sure she told that story about Cubby.
Interesting.
I may be wrong.
She
But
was
anyway,
an Imagineer, too.
Cubby or Ann?
No, Anne.
No, Ann.
All right, we're off the rails. So that rocking sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google, YouTube, LiveDesignOnline.com, Amazon Prime Music, and just about every other podcast site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk shenanigans.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
If you do decide to litigate, the law firm of Flecht, Flocht, Flair, and Glare and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Washington, D.C., and the Lone Star State.
And be sure to join us next week when we talk to principal lighting designer for Disney Parks Live Entertainment, K.C. Wilkinson.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Toodles.
Bye-bye.